Hi, my name is Christy Nolan. I am currently the instructional coach here at Lyles Middle School in Garland Independent District. Today I will be observing the classroom of Mr. Andre Ford, who is our 6th grade reading teacher. He teaches our intervention reading class. Today he will be doing the activity of having our kids listen to The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. The type of instructional strategies he will be using, he will be having the kids paired in order to be able to annotate the text, as well as having paired discussions in order to identify key elements of the plot. The type of differentiated strategies he will be using the audio, which is good for our struggling learners. That way it allows them to hear fluent reading of the text, as well as help with vocabulary, which allows them to hear the pronunciation of words that they may not necessarily be familiar with, or they may not know how to pronunciate. He will also be stopping the audio in chunks, and chunking is also good for our struggling readers, so that they could also be able to have time to discuss, as well as figure out what's important to annotate. Also on the desk, he has accountable talk stems, which helps aid our kids in discussion, so that way they're not just always discussing what they have underlined, but also helping them get to the meat of the text to have meaningful conversations during their turn and talk time, or just in their paired discussions. To help aid in his differentiated strategies, he's also going to be using short colored strips to be able to monitor their student engagement. Each time that the student uses one of the accountable talk stems, they have to put one of the colored strips in the middle of them and the other student, just to be able to keep themselves accountable to the discussion. And while Mr. Ford is actually walking around facilitating, he can monitor who is actually participating in the paired discussion. The differentiated instruction is used by himself, not only to engage the students, but also to be able to identify if the students are actually able to locate the key elements of plot within the given text, which is the TEK that he's actually working on with the students. And lastly, he's able to assess the student engagement, again, by using the color strips. Once the students use one of the accountable talk stems, again, the color strips will help him identify which of the students have actually participated so far in the class discussion.
Each of you has 2 of these, and we're going to call them talking chips. As you are discussing information that you've underlined and highlighted with your partner, you will use your talking chip. After you've said what you need to say, you will lay your chip down so that your partner will have an opportunity to respond, and they will lay their chip down, and vice versa. This is to make sure that not one person is monopolizing the conversation or taking up all of the time. We're walking around to make sure that I'm seeing multiple colors, and not just all of the same color. You'll do this at every stopping point. So don't think that I spoke it the first time, and I'm not going to speak the second time. No, at every stopping point you should be talking. It's in the closet, baby. Are we understanding? So what we'll be doing is, when I stop, you underline some things, your partners underline some things, you discuss what you've underlined, discuss some of the things that are happening in the story. On your desk are your accountable talk stems, for those of you that may not be able to get something going. You can use these. I discovered that, or I noticed that from the story, so and so and so and so. You can go back to your desk. So again, on your desk are the accountable talk stems that you will use to kind of guide your conversation with those that are unable to get something going. And I will also have some guiding questions on the screen for you in just a moment. So in addition to your annotation, your underlining, highlighting, circling, all of those things, these are some of the things I want you to take note of. Identify keywords to help you identify the point of view of the text. Give me, identify the conflict, and I'm letting you know that there are 3 types in this particular text. See if you can find them, and find me the climax. As we've discussed plot elements, and things of that nature. Identify your climax. Remember, when you are making underlines, you're doing your circling, you're writing notes in the margin to go with those paragraphs. You're not just underlining and you're not just circling, but you're also making notations. No notations means no grading. You must annotate. You need to put that away, because if that's going to be a distraction for you, I will put that outside. Okay? Are we understanding? So, we're looking for point of view, conflict, climax, and then these are just some generic discussion questions that you guys can kind of use when you're talking with each other. You know, what do you think about the narrator at this point? What do you think is going to happen next after I come to a stopping point? You know, what did you underline? Why did you make that note there? Or why did you underline that, but I didn't underline that? And then, of course, you have your accountable talk stems. You know, I agree because, or in my opinion, I believe this is what's going to happen. Why do you feel the way that you feel about that? What made you say that? And just kind of generate that conversation. There must be discussion, guys. This is not just when it's stopping and everybody's looking at each other. Please use this as an opportunity to talk. Now you can talk. So use that opportunity to do so. I'll be walking around, circling, listening, hearing, making sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's participating. Okay? Yes. Yeah, that's yours to write on. Please do not lose it.
The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. What a rage filled my soul. I was no longer myself. Some evil, drunken spirit flamed in my heart. I do not expect you to believe the wild story I'm about to tell. Mad indeed would I be to expect it, for my own eyes and ears find it hard to believe. Yet mad I am not. And very surely I do not dream. But tomorrow I die. And today I must tell my story and free my soul. From childhood I was known for my calm and gentle nature. I was so soft-hearted that my friends made fun of me. I loved animals, and my parents let me have many pets. My happiest moments were spent feeding and petting them. I grew to manhood feeling the same way. If you ever have had a faithful dog, you know what I mean. How truly unselfish and giving animals are compared to the weak and changing friendships of men. I married young and was glad to find that my wife felt as I did. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This cat was very large and beautiful. It was completely black and unbelievably smart. It seemed to know so much that my wife used to joke that, like all black cats, it was a witch in disguise. Not that she was ever serious about this. No, it was hardly worth mentioning. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and friend. I alone fed him, and he followed me wherever I went about the house. It even was hard to stop him from trailing me through the streets. Our friendship lasted for several years. During this time, I am ashamed to admit it, my personality grew worse. I began to drink. I grew more moody and more nervous. I acted badly toward my pets. Toward my wife, I behaved no better.
I'll take this opportunity to discuss your notations. Take note of your discussion questions for those that need some starters. But you should be discussing at this point that you underlined and or highlighted. Go. Some dialogue. Yes. Now you can talk. And use your talking point. Use your talking chip so that you're not one person is not taking up all the time. Notations on your sheets. What do you think? What do you think about the narrator so far? But he what? He's what? How is he growing differently? What's causing him to do that? Okay. So what do you think is going to happen next? You think his life's going to be ruined? No. So you say because of the drinking, his life is going to be ruined? Okay. What notations have you guys made? Discuss that. What underlining have you made? What notations? Make sure that you're doing that. You're following along and underlining the information. Making notes in the margins. I should not see blank papers. I see a lot of blank first pages. There should be things highlighted and underlined. There's a lot of good information on that very first page. Thank you. All right, 30 seconds, and I'm going to restart the audio. Come to a stopping point. We are on page 19, second paragraph, at the top of the page. Again, underline and highlight while the audio is that I noticed that in him returning back to the house, and he saw the outline of the cat, he's assuming that someone must have cut the cat down from the tree and thrown the cat into the window to try to jostle them away as the fire began to break out. And and it's not mentioned, and this is just me throwing something out there as we continue to read, there was no body found. The cat's body was never found. Even if it was burned, you're still going to find some evidence of that. Okay? Oh, you have.
I predicted that I think that the guy is just imagining that he killed the cat and he's probably having a dream.
Okay, let's keep reading to find it. We are on page 20, the last paragraph at the bottom. One night I sat half drunk. And we're getting ready to go to the next page.
One night I sat, half drunk in a bar. I saw something sitting on top of a barrel of rum. I came near and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, very large, just as large as Pluto. It looked like him in every way except one. Pluto did not have a white hair upon any part of his body. But this cat had a large patch of white which covered nearly all of his chest. I touched him and he rose at once. The cat purred loudly and rubbed against my hand. It seemed very happy to be near me. This was the very creature I was looking for. Then once I offered to buy it from the bartender, but the bartender laid no claim to it. He knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. I continued to pet the cat. When I prepared to go home, the animal seemed to wish to go along with me. I let it do so, bending to pet it as we went. When it reached my house, it entered at once. It soon became a great favorite with my wife. As for me, I soon found myself disliking the pet. This was just the opposite of what I had expected. I do not know how or why this was. Perhaps it had something to do with its love for me. I stayed away from the cat, for I remembered Pluto and was filled with shame. But slowly, very slowly, my hatred grew. Finally, I could no longer stand it. I would rush from the room whenever the cat entered. Something added to my hatred of the beast. It was a discovery I made the morning after I brought it home. I found that this cat, like Pluto, had lost one of its eyes. This, however, only made it more dear to my wife. The more I tried to avoid this cat, the closer it clung to me. It followed my footsteps wherever I went. When I sat down, it waited under my chair. Then it would jump up on my knees and begin to purr. When I got up to walk, it would get between my feet, nearly knocking me over. At such times, I longed to destroy it with a blow. I did not do so, partly because I remembered my former crime. But mostly, let me confess at once, because of my total fear of the beast.
Go ahead, discuss.
Feeling so good. Wednesdays are my best days.
All right, I want to throw out a question for you to think about as we continue to read. When he made his discovery that this particular black cat also had the same condition as Pluto, what are the odds that he would invite the same cat to his house to come back to live with him? That's something I want you guys to discuss on the second go round. And also, one of the notations that I noticed was this. At the top it says, when it reached my house, it entered at once. How many stray cats do you know that automatically just take to an individual? Seriously, think about that. We are on 22. At the bottom, I am ashamed to admit. Okay?
I am ashamed to admit,
Follow along
even
the
in
line.
itself,
Highlight.
what caused that
Circle.
incident. My wife had pointed more than once to the cat's white hair. I have spoken of it before. It was the only difference between this cat and the one I had killed. This mark was at first a white patch without any shape. It was now the outline of something that made me shake. It was the outline of the gallows.
I'll explain in a moment. You have taken your agenda? Anybody writing a question on the board on your note card? First, you write down your statement. Is he going to be late as usual, or is he absent today?
He's late, but he's late. But he's here. He's here, but he's here.
Leandria, please join DeMarcus. Yes, sir.
Are we reading the black cat?
I'm sorry?
Are we reading the black cat today?
We are. All right, with your note card, if you would go ahead and write down the statement, or write down the question that is on the board, you need to write that on your note card. Also include your name, today's date, and your class period, please. Yes, Mr. Ford. Another 14. Red is not going to do it for me. for this. And you can use red for annotation, but not to turn it for me. So I need you to use that black pen to write down your statement. Sir, come on in. Sit down. So are you working or are you leaving? That goes with Thanks. Appreciate it. Now, as you're finishing up the copying down of the question on your note card, we are going to listen to the audio for the Black Cat this afternoon. And as you are listening, you of course are following along with your text. You will be underlining, highlighting, and or circling keywords, main ideas, nothing that we have not done before or that you haven't done before. So as we did Advent Camp today, it was part of Advent Camp. I will be stopping the audio periodically for you guys to discuss with your partner the information that you're underlining, highlighting, and making note of. Also, I will have some guiding questions that I'm going to post in just a moment that will kind of generate some conversation between the two of you for those that kind of have a little bit of trouble getting some things started. But you should both be discussing. One person should not be speaking all the time with one just listening, which is the reason for the colored pieces of paper that I just gave you. After you speak, you will lay your piece of paper down and allow your partner an opportunity to respond, and they will lay their piece of paper down and vice versa, so that it's a continuing conversation. Not just one person talking, not one person talking over the other, but each of you listening to one another's ideas. Also, if you notice on your desk are taped countable talk stems. So if you don't quite know how to get started, you don't know quite what to ask, it gives you some ways to respond, and it also gives you some ways to comment, in addition to some questions that you can ask to your partner to generate dialogue, okay? Please make very sure that while the audio is going on, young people, because I've been seeing this across my other classes, that you are underlining, highlighting, or circling key terms during that time, okay? The purpose of the conversation is so that you two can discuss some of the things that you noted or highlighted. Now, that does not mean that if there's something that you didn't get that your partner got, that you can't highlight or make note of that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, when I pause the audio and I walk around, that front page or wherever we've read up until that point, it should not be blank. There's plenty of information, there are plenty of things that are happening within this first 4 to 5 minutes that you should be making note of, underlining, and highlighting. Okay? You will receive a grade for your annotation. You will not receive a grade for underlining and highlighting. There must be notes in the margins. No notes made, no grade. Okay? So please be mindful of that. If you have questions, as always, please ask. Okay? These are a couple of things a few things I want you to identify during the reading. Look for keywords that are going to help you tell me what the point of view of the story is, what point of view is the story written from. Identify the 3 types of conflict. We've talked about 4. This story has 3 of those 4. And also, can you find the climax? Make note of those things. If as you're reading, you come across something that is a potential conflict, highlight that and write conflict. What type of conflict is it? Make note of that as well. Circle a few of the keywords and write whatever point of view you believe this story is being told from. And then once you identify and find the climax, right next to that paragraph, this is the climax or the turning point of this particular story. Also, I've listed some generic discussion questions that you can use between the two of you to kind of generate dialogue. As you come to a stopping point, ask one another, what do you think about the narrator? Oh, okay, what do you think? If you made notes or underlined something that your partner did not, ask them why they underlined that information. And then, of course, always make predictions. What do we think is going to be happening next in the story? And these are just some generic questions that you guys can be asking. Of course, again, using your accountable talk stems on your desk, those questions I should be hearing dialogue as I'm walking around, as I'm listening to the conversations. All right?
The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. What a rage filled my soul. I was no longer myself. Some evil, drunken spirit flame in my heart. I do not expect you to believe the wild story I'm about to tell. Mad indeed would I be to expect it, for my own eyes and ears find it hard to believe. Yet mad I am not, and very surely I do not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I must tell my story and free my soul. From childhood I was known for my calm and gentle nature. I was so soft-hearted that my friends made fun of me. I loved animals, and my parents let me have many pets. My happiest moments were spent feeding and petting them. I grew to manhood feeling the same way. If you ever have had a faithful dog, you know what I mean. How truly unselfish and giving animals are compared to the weak and changing friendships of men. I married young and was glad to find that my wife felt as I did. We had birds, goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This cat was very large and beautiful. It was completely black and unbelievably smart. It seemed to know so much that my wife used to joke that, like all black cats, it was a witch in disguise. Not that she was ever serious about this. No, it was hardly worth mentioning. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and friend. I alone fed him, and he followed me wherever I went about the house. It even was hard to stop him from trailing me through the streets. Our friendship lasted for several years. During this time, I am ashamed to admit, my personality grew worse. I began to drink. I grew more moody and more nervous. I acted badly toward my pet. Toward my wife, I behaved no better.
Take this opportunity to discuss.
What does it say in the first one? It said, I did not dream, but tomorrow I know.
Why do you think?
Discussing. There's two questions on the board. If you can't find something to discuss right off top, you should count the top statements as well. Discuss some of the notations or underlinings that you made. Discuss what you think is going to happen next.
I said that hard flashes lasted for 7 months. And it said that he kept following the tree. It said he kept following that's all I know. Your cat name is Pluto. I read this. We got one more period to go. One more period. And I'll be out of here.
The last line you stopped at was toward my wife, I behaved well. And he just asked you what he thinks is going to happen next. Yes, she. Okay. So, what is your What do you think about the narrator?
What was that number?
This is our narrator. What do you think about him? You think he's doing what he shouldn't be doing? What makes you think that? Well, not based on his picture, based on what you just read from the text. And how does alcohol affect the individual?
Okay, after observing Mr. Ford's class, there were a lot of things that I was quite impressed with. There were many things that actually went well. First, I was very impressed with the way that the students actually entered the classroom. We're in the process of trying to become a national AVID demonstration site here at our campus. So the fact that our students entered the classroom and began copying down their objective and we will and I will statement without even being prompted to, with our demographic of kids, was very huge in my eyes. It showed a lot of consistency on the teacher's part. Even prior to that, I noticed that the teacher during that particular passing period stood in the doorway and as the kids entered the classroom, handed each student a blank index card that each of them knew upon entering the classroom they had to copy their warm-up onto that index card. And the actual warm-up was going to serve as their DOL, which is their demonstration of learning at the end of the lesson. So that was going to come at the end of the lesson to show if the kids had actually gained something from that particular lesson for the day. Which I kind of noted that that was a great way to save time, being that each class period is only 47 minutes long. In addition to that, I noticed that one of the things that we had discussed going into the lesson with the differentiated strategies was that he was going to have the kids use the accountable talk stems as well as the color strips to try to engage the students more throughout the lesson, and those worked great for the kids. It was going to be a telling point for me as well as him, but the kids actually loved them. I actually realized that some of them thought that because they only had 2 or 3 strips that they were only allowed to say 2 or 3 things, so that would have been one of the things that I really would have changed. I would have kind of given the kids either some type of rubric or just some type of instructions on how to actually use the card so that way they wouldn't have felt so limited with their responses. I realized that the accountable talk stems really helped the kids to formulate their answers during the discussion, and it did exactly what we wanted it to do. The kids were not at all stifled throughout the discussion, so it wasn't just them discussing with each other what they had actually highlighted. We saw many of them referring back to the stems many of times to actually format what it was they wanted to relay to their discussion partner. So that worked out perfectly. It kept the discussions flowing, and it kind of helped the kids really get to the meat of the text a whole lot quicker. We found that some of them wanted to jump ahead because they got so engaged that they didn't want to wait for the audio to start back up. They wanted to go ahead, and I've noticed that he was walking around tapping on the desk a good bit to try to tell the kids to wait a second, not to go ahead of the text. Another thing I realized was that as some of the kids entered the classroom late, because it wasn't audio, it was kind of difficult to catch those kids up, and having them jump in at different points throughout the text was kind of difficult for the way that the lesson was designed. I'm not sure how he could have offset that without just having them begin reading from the beginning, but they weren't able to really utilize the way that the lesson was designed for the day or to capitalize on the fact of using the accountable talk stems or the color strips because they were so far behind. And once they started to see how those tools were actually engaging their classmates, they really wanted to be a part of that, but it was difficult because they didn't have much to contribute. So having them to just kind of jump in where everyone was, it just kind of left them out. And some of those students really needed that particular lesson. Another thing that I noticed was that it was a great lesson for that particular TEK. And what he was trying to see was if doing it that particular way was going to help him see if the students were able to identify those key elements of plot within the text. Even though he didn't hear much of it in conversation, just in being able to see what the students were writing, and some of the questions that they were asking him, you could tell that they knew exactly what was actually driving the text. And that may be something that he may be able to build upon with the next lesson. The DOL was asking them, upon reading the text or hearing the text, if they were given a summary question, how would they know, or exactly what summary strategy would they be able to apply to that particular question? And on our campus, we teach our students either CGS, which is character goal solution, or CPS, character problem solution. And just in listening to the text or reading the text, they would have to be able to tell whether or not the character in that particular text has either a problem or a goal. And for our students, that's half of the battle. So I thought it was a pretty decent DOL, especially because he was not leading the lesson. So to have them come to that conclusion on their own throughout the discussions was pretty big for our kids. I thought this type of differentiated lesson was really good for our teachers, or for this particular teacher, because as we go in walkthroughs, or as I attend walkthroughs with many of the administration, one thing that we see is that our teachers do not allow our students to work independently, that they want to do most of the teaching. So one thing that I noticed today is that our students are really capable of doing many difficult tasks if our teachers just get out of the way, but they would need to know more of these differentiated strategies. So one thing that I would need to know, or what could help me better as an aspiring administrator, is that having many professional developments on differentiated strategies would be something great to have in my back pocket to help some of my struggling teachers, because it truly does benefit our students. The kids were able to, become more engaged than I've ever seen before, and they were actually able to leave the classroom today with a whole lot more versus him actually having to tell them anything. So it worked out more for the kids' benefit. So I could see if many of my own campus administrators were, abreast of these type of strategies and techniques to help our students and help our teachers alike.